When a renowned neurosurgeon is found dead with a poisoned syringe driven into his neck, police discovered something disturbing. The killer had left clues. Not by accident, but purposefully, as if challenging investigators to an intellectual duel. This is the true story of how Detective Camila Vasconcelos faced a criminal mind that believed it was smarter than the entire New York police force, and discovered that sometimes ego is the most lethal weapon of all. The storm hit the Hamptons like a sledgehammer against glass. Lightning carved violent scars across the October sky, while thunder rolled through the estate grounds of Dr. Emilio Torrealba's mansion, shaking the century-old windows in their frames. Rain lashed against the Georgian columns with such fury that even the most seasoned residents had retreated indoors, grateful for thick walls and modern security systems. But inside the mansion at 47 June Road, security meant nothing to a dead man. Maria Santos had worked as the Torrealba family housekeeper for 12 years. She had seen the doctor at his best and worst, the brilliant surgeon who could save lives with hands steadier than a watchmaker's, and the cold manipulator who collected secrets like other men collected vintage wines. But she had never seen him like this. The laboratory door stood ajar, which was wrong. Dr. Torrealba never left his private sanctuary unlocked, especially during his weekend gatherings. Maria pushed the heavy oak door open with her fingertips, and the metallic smell hit her immediately. Copper and chemicals mixing in a cocktail that made her stomach revolt. Dr. Emilio Torrealba sat slumped over his mahogany desk, his silver hair matted with blood, eyes wide open in permanent shock. A syringe protruded from his neck like an accusatory finger, its contents long since emptied into his bloodstream. But it wasn't the corpse that made Maria scream loud enough to pierce. Through the storm's roar, it was the message written in blood across the white laboratory wall. 144. Plus 32, 5 Arfra. Detective Camila Vasconcelos arrived 47 minutes later, her sedan skidding slightly on the rain-slicked driveway. Even with 20 years on the force and a doctorate in criminal psychology, she felt the familiar electric charge that came with a scene this meticulously staged. The storm had effectively cut off the estate from the outside world. No one in, no one out, which meant the killer was still here. "What do we have, Bruno?" she asked her partner as she shook rain from her coat. Detective Bruno Castanheira was already photographing the scene, his weathered face grim behind wire-rimmed glasses. Victim is Dr. Emilio Torrealba, 58, neurosurgeon, found dead in his private laboratory by the housekeeper around 9:30 p.m. Cause appears to be poisoning via syringe injection to the carotid artery. Bruno's voice carried the practiced neutrality. To have someone who had seen too many bodies. But here's where it gets interesting. He led her through the mansion's marble corridors, past oil paintings worth more than most people's homes, to the laboratory. The room was a strange hybrid of medical facility and gentleman's study. Surgical equipment gleamed under soft lighting, while leather-bound books lined mahogany shelves. And there, impossible to ignore, was the blood-written equation. 12 plus 9 minus 5, Camilla murmured. Solving the simple math. Equals 16 could be a room number, a date, a code. She crouched beside the body, noting the precision of the injection site. This wasn't random violence. Look at the angle, the depth. Someone with medical knowledge did this. Gets better, Bruno said, handing her an evidence bag containing a folded piece of paper. Found this tucked into his lab coat pocket. Appears to be placed there post-mortem. Camilla unfolded the note with gloved hands. In elegant handwriting it read, "Round 1 begins now. Can you solve what I've created before the storm ends? A friend." The implications sent ice through her veins. This wasn't just murder. It was the opening move in some twisted game. And somewhere in this mansion, among the 7 surviving guests trapped by the storm, a killer was watching their every move. "Who else is in the house?" she asked, her mind already cataloging potential suspects and escape routes. 8 people total, including the victim. His wife Adriana Santamaria, family lawyer Sebastian Drummond, colleague Dr. Valentina Rojas, former patient Professor Leticia Montalvo, plus the housekeeper Maria Santos, chef Carlos Medina, and groundskeeper Tom Bradley. Bruno consulted his notebook. All confirmed present when the body was discovered. Storm knocked out phone lines and cell towers around 8 p.m. Perfect isolation. Camilla studied the scene once more, noting details that nagged at her detectives. Instincts. The laboratory was too clean except for the blood message. The syringe placement was too theatrical. Even the timing felt calculated, killed during a storm that would trap everyone together like pieces on a board. "Bruno," she said slowly, "I think we're dealing with someone who believes they're smarter than we are. Someone who's turned murder into intellectual entertainment." She looked at the blood-written equation again. "And they're just getting started." As if summoned by her words, a scream echoed from somewhere deep in the mansion. Not the sharp cry of discovery, but the prolonged wail of someone confronting pure terror. Camilla and Bruno exchanged glances before running toward the sound, their footsteps echoing against marble floors, while thunder continued its relentless assault on the night. The game, it seemed, was already in motion. The scream had come from the mansion's grand library, where the surviving guests huddled together like survivors of a shipwreck. The room's usual elegance, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, Persian rugs, and a crackling fireplace, now felt more like a gilded cage. 7 faces turned toward Camilla as she entered, each expression a careful mask hiding desperation, fear, or something far more dangerous. "Everyone remain calm," Camilla announced, her voice cutting through the whispered conversations. "I'm Detective Vasconcelos, and this is Detective Castanheira. We need to speak with each of you, individually, about tonight's events." The woman who had screamed sat curled in a wingback chair, her hands trembling around a crystal tumbler of whiskey. Adriana Santamaria possessed the kind of beauty that money could preserve but not create. High cheekbones, auburn hair swept into a perfect chignon, and emerald eyes that held secrets like locked vaults. At 42, she looked 30, but her grief appeared genuine enough. "Mrs. Santamaria," Camilla began gently, "I know this is difficult, but I need to understand your husband's state of mind tonight. Did he seem worried about anything? Anyone?" Adriana's laugh held no humor. "Worried. Detective, my husband collected enemies like other men collect stamps. He was brilliant, yes, but he was also—" She paused, searching for diplomatic words. "He had information about people, important people, information they preferred to keep private. Are you suggesting blackmail?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Adriana replied carefully. "I'm simply stating facts. Emilio knew things, and knowing things made him powerful." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "It also made him vulnerable." Bruno stepped forward. "Mrs. Santamaria, were you and your husband experiencing any financial difficulties?" The question hit like a physical blow. Adriana's composure cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "How did you— Who told you that?" Her eyes darted around the room, landing accusingly on a distinguished man in his 60s who stood near the fireplace. Sebastian Drummond, the family lawyer, possessed the kind of presence that commanded courtrooms and boardrooms alike. His silver hair was perfectly styled despite the evening's chaos, and his charcoal suit showed no wrinkles, but his hands, Camilla noticed, betrayed him. They shook almost imperceptibly as he adjusted his tie. "Mr. Drummond," Camilla addressed him directly, "you've been the Torrealba family attorney for how long?" 15 years, he replied, his voice carrying the measured cadence of someone accustomed to choosing words carefully. "I handled all of Emilio's legal affairs, both personal and professional, including his more unconventional business practices." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Detective." "I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Did Dr. Torrealba engage in activities that might have made him enemies? Activities that might have required legal protection?" Before Sebastian could answer, a new voice cut through the tension. "Oh, please, we all know what Emilio was." Professor Leticia Montalvo rose from her chair with fluid grace that belied her 70 years. Once a renowned biochemist, she now moved with the careful precision of someone whose body had betrayed her. A thin scar ran along her left temple, barely visible, but unmistakably present. "Professor Montalvo," Camilla said, "you were Dr. Torrealba's patient. What was the nature of your treatment?" Letitia's eyes sharpened like surgical instruments. "Brain surgery, Detective. 3 years ago, a supposedly routine procedure to remove a benign tumor." She touched the scar absently. "Routine, that is, until Emilio's hands weren't quite as steady as his reputation suggested. The tumor was removed successfully, but he damaged surrounding tissue. I lost most of my motor control on my left side. That must have been devastating for someone in your profession." "Devastating?" Letitia's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "Detective, I went from groundbreaking research in neurotoxins to being unable to hold a test tube without assistance. Emilio destroyed my life, then had the audacity to suggest I was lucky to be alive at all. The room fell silent except for the storm's continued assault and the fire's hypnotic crackling. Camilla made mental notes about each revelation, but something nagged at her, the practiced way each person revealed their motive as if they had rehearsed their confessions. Dr. Rojas, she turned to the fourth suspect, you worked with Dr. Torrealba professionally. What was your relationship like? Dr. Valentina Rojas was everything Emilio hadn't been. Young, idealistic, and burning with the passion of someone who believed medicine could save the world. At 34, she had already earned recognition for her innovative surgical techniques, but her eyes held the haunted look of someone who had seen their heroes fall from impossible heights. Emilio was my mentor, she said quietly. Or so I thought, until I discovered he had been stealing my research, publishing it under his name, while sabotaging my grant applications. Her voice grew harder. 6 years of groundbreaking work on brain tumor treatments, all credited to him. My career was essentially over before it began. That's a serious accusation, Bruno noted. It's a serious crime, Valentina shot back. Academic theft. Might not sound dramatic, but in our field it's career murder. Emilio killed my professional future as surely as if he had put a bullet in my head. Camilla absorbed this information while studying the room's dynamics. Each suspect had motive, opportunity, and, given their various backgrounds, the means to commit the crime. But the blood-written equation suggested something beyond simple revenge. This was personal, yes, but it was also a performance. The note found with Dr. Torrealba's body mentioned this being round 1, she announced to the group. Does anyone have any idea what that might mean? The silence stretched taut as a violin string. Outside, lightning illuminated the windows in brief, stark flashes that turned the library into a black and white photograph of fear and guilt. Finally, Sebastian spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Detective, there's something you should know about the laboratory, about what Emilio was really doing in there. All eyes turned to him, and Camilla felt the familiar tingle that meant they were about to step through a door that couldn't be closed again. What kind of something, Mr. Drummond? The kind that gets people killed, he replied. The kind that means whoever did this might not be finished. As if summoned by his words, the lights flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the mansion into absolute darkness. In the pitch black, someone whispered, "Round 2 begins now." And Detective Camilla Vasconcelos realized they weren't just hunting a killer, they were being hunted in return. The journey back to the library felt like walking through a minefield of shadows and secrets. Each portrait on the walls seemed to watch them pass, and every creak of the old mansion's bones made Camilla's hand drift toward her weapon. The countdown in her head, 38 minutes, 37, 36, created a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. When they reached the far library, the scene had shifted subtly. The 7 suspects were no longer huddled together for comfort. Instead, they had unconsciously arranged themselves in a rough circle, like predators sizing each other up. The earlier facade of shocked grief had cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "We need to talk about Dr. Torrealba's laboratory experiments," Camilla announced without preamble. "The real ones." The silence that followed felt dense as fog. Finally, it was Adriana who broke, her composure shattering like crystal against stone. "You found his files," she said, not really asking. "His goddamn files on all of us." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her voice carried anger rather than sorrow. "He didn't just collect secrets, Detective, he created them. He manufactured situations where people would compromise themselves, then documented everything." "What kind of situations?" Bruno pressed. Dr. Valentina stood abruptly, pacing to the fireplace. "He would offer opportunities that seemed legitimate, research grants, speaking engagements, professional recommendations, but there was always a catch, always a moral compromise buried in the fine print. For Valentina, it was a grant that required falsifying data, Sebastian added, his legal training making him precise even in confession. "Small alterations," he said, "nothing that would affect patient outcomes, just enough to ensure the funding came through." "And you?" Camilla looked at the lawyer. Sebastian's hands resumed their trembling. "Client confidentiality violations. He needed information about certain patients' legal situations, medical malpractice suits, insurance claims. Said it was for their own protection to help him provide better care." His laugh was bitter. "I provided the information. Small pieces at first, then larger breaches. By the time I realized what was happening, he had documentation of enough ethics violations to destroy my career. Professor Leticia spoke from her chair, her voice carrying the weight of scientific precision. The beauty of Emilio's system was its gradual nature, like a toxin introduced slowly into the bloodstream. By the time you realized you were poisoned, the damage was irreversible. What was your compromise? Camilla asked. Research falsification, Leticia replied without shame. During my final project before the surgery, he convinced me to alter results that showed potential carcinogenic effects in a new drug compound. Said the data was inconclusive anyway, that preventing the drug's release would hurt more people than it helped. She touched her temple scar. I sometimes wonder if my brain tumor was cosmic justice. Camilla felt the pieces clicking together. So he had leverage on all of you, but murder requires more than blackmail. It requires desperation, or opportunity, Bruno added. Someone who could get close enough to inject him without suspicion. Adriana wiped her tears with shaking hands. There's more, Detective. The laboratory wasn't just for show. Emilio was conducting actual experiments on people. The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Camilla leaned forward. What kind of experiments? Cognitive enhancement trials, Dr. Valentina answered. He'd identified certain neurological markers that suggested exceptional intelligence potential. He was testing drug compounds that could theoretically enhance cognitive function. Theoretically, the reality was different, Sebastian said grimly. Most subjects experienced severe side effects, memory loss, personality changes, motor control problems. He was essentially creating patients for his practice while testing his theories. Camilla looked at Professor Leticia with new understanding. Your motor control issues weren't from surgical complications, Leticia finished. They were from the cognitive enhancement serum he administered without my knowledge during the procedure. I was too trusting, too eager to believe that a brilliant surgeon could make me even more brilliant. Her smile was sharp as a scalpel. Instead, he made me a perfect case study in how intelligence can be weaponized. Bruno checked his watch. 22 minutes left. Who else knew about these experiments? Anyone with access to his laboratory records, Adriana said. But he was careful. Most of the real documentation was kept elsewhere. Where? The question hung in the air until a new voice answered from the doorway. In the basement laboratory, the one none of you know about. They turned to see Maria Santos, the housekeeper, standing in the library entrance. But this wasn't the frightened woman who had discovered the body. This Maria moved with confidence, her earlier panic replaced by something calculating and cold. Maria, Camilla rose slowly. What basement laboratory? The one where he kept his real test subjects. Maria replied, stepping into the room. The homeless patients he recruited from city shelters, the elderly residents from understaffed nursing homes, the psychiatric patients whose families had abandoned them. The revelations hit like physical blows. Camilla felt the investigation tilting on its axis as new possibilities emerged. How do you know about this? Because I helped him recruit them, Maria said simply. I've been documenting everything for 3 years. Every experiment, every victim, every death. She reached into her apron and withdrew a small recording device, including tonight's murder. The room erupted in shocked voices, but Maria held up her hand. Oh, I didn't kill him, but I know who did. And more importantly, I know why they're playing this elaborate game with all of you. Camilla's radio crackled to life. Impossible since there was no signal. But the voice that emerged was clear as winter air. 15 minutes, Detective. Time for the final round. Come to the basement if you want to save them all. Who is that? Bruno demanded. Maria smiled, and for the first time all evening, it reached her eyes. That, Detective, is someone who's been planning this night for a very long time. Someone who knew exactly how each of these people would react under pressure. She gestured to the 7 suspects. Someone who understands that the perfect crime isn't about avoiding detection. It's about making the detectives complicit in your victory. The lights flickered once more, and when they stabilized, a new message appeared on the library's computer screen. Basement. Now, come alone, or watch them all burn. Outside, the storm reached its crescendo, but inside the mansion, Camilla realized they were in the eye of a much more dangerous tempest, one that had been brewing for years and was about to make landfall with devastating force. The basement stairs descended into darkness that felt alive, pulsing with malevolent intent. Camilla's flashlight beam cut through shadows that seemed to swallow light whole, revealing glimpses of medical equipment that had no business existing in a private residence. Behind her, Bruno's breathing was controlled but tense. 23 years of partnership had taught them to read each other's fear. "This is wrong," Bruno whispered as they reached the bottom step. "Everything about this feels like a trap." "It is a trap," Camilla replied, her weapon drawn. "But it's the only way forward." The basement laboratory was a nightmare made manifest. Unlike the pristine study upstairs, this space bore the marks of real experimentation. Surgical tables with restraint straps, IV stands with dried blood, and filing cabinets that promised to hold horrors beyond imagination. But what drew Camilla's attention was the wall of monitors showing feeds from every room in the mansion. Professor Letitia sat in perfect focus on screen 3, her earlier motor control issues completely absent as she typed rapidly on a laptop. Sebastian paced screen 5 with the measured steps of someone making calculations. Dr. Valentina examined something in her medical bag on screen 7, all of them behaving as if they were alone, unaware they were being watched. "Detective Vasconcelos," a voice called from the shadows. "I've been waiting." A figure stepped into the light, and Camilla felt her understanding of the case explode like glass under pressure. It was Dr. Emilio Torrealba, very much alive, very much not dead, and wearing a smile that belonged in her nightmares. "Impossible," Bruno breathed, his weapon immediately trained on the man they'd seen lying dead upstairs. "We saw your body. We checked for pulse. You saw what I wanted you to see," Emilio replied calmly. "A combination of neuromuscular paralytic agents and theatrical makeup. Quite effective, really. I was conscious for your entire examination, listening to every word." Camilla's mind raced through implications. "The syringe in your neck contained nothing but saline solution. The real injection came hours earlier, administered by my own hand. A carefully calculated dose to simulate death while maintaining consciousness." He gestured to the monitors. "I needed to observe how each of my subjects would react under extreme stress." "Subjects?" The word tasted bitter in Camilla's mouth. 7 individuals I've been studying for years. Each one represents a different personality type, a different response pattern to psychological pressure. Emilio's eyes gleamed with scientific fervor. "Adriana, the dependent spouse who crumbles under financial pressure. Sebastian, the methodical lawyer who seeks control through information. Letitia, the damaged intellectual seeking validation through puzzle solving." Bruno kept his weapon steady. "You're insane." "I'm thorough," Emilio corrected. "Do you know how rare it is to gather 7 perfect psychological specimens in one location? Tonight wasn't just about testing them. It was about testing you, Detective Vasconcelos. Me. Your reputation for solving impossible cases precedes you. I needed to know if my psychological models could predict the behavior of someone operating outside my controlled environment." He pulled out a tablet showing detailed behavioral predictions. "So far, you've followed my projections with 94.7% accuracy." Camilla felt sick. "The profiles in you're safe, all part of the performance. I wanted you to think I was the victim while I watched how you processed information, made deductions, built relationships with suspects." His smile widened. "You're quite predictable, actually. Your obsession with solving puzzles makes you vulnerable to manipulation." "Then why reveal yourself now?" Bruno demanded. "Because the real experiment is just beginning." Emilio pressed a button on his tablet. Throughout the mansion, doors began, locking with electronic clicks that echoed through the monitor speakers. 8 people, isolated in a mansion during a storm. 7 of them have committed crimes that I've documented. 1 detective who believes in justice above all else. The monitors showed the suspects trying their doors, finding them sealed. Panic was setting in. "What do you want?" Camilla asked. "I want to see what happens when you're forced to choose," Emilio said. "In approximately 10 minutes, those rooms will begin filling with a paralytic gas, the same compound I used to fake my death. Non-lethal, but it will render them unconscious for hours. You have enough antidote for exactly 4 people." He gestured to a medical case containing syringes filled with clear liquid. "Choose which 4 deserve to live conscious, detective. Choose which 3 will be left helpless while I conduct the final phase of my experiment." "You're talking about torture." "I'm talking about science. Pure, uncompromised observation of human behavior under ultimate stress." Emilio checked his watch. 9 minutes, detective. Time to show me how your famous moral compass works when the stakes are real." Camilla looked at the monitors, watching 7 people who had all committed crimes but who didn't deserve whatever Emilio had planned. The weight of choice pressed down on her like gravity itself. But then she noticed something that made her smile for the first time all evening. On screen 3, Professor Letitia wasn't panicking about the locked door. Instead, she was typing commands into her laptop with the precision of someone who understood exactly what was happening. "Dr. Torrealba," Camilla said slowly, "I think your experiment has a fatal flaw." "Impossible. I've accounted for every variable." "Have you?" Camilla's smile widened. "Because you're operating under the assumption that you're the only one playing a game tonight." Emilio's confidence flickered for the first time all evening. "What are you talking about?" Camilla gestured to the monitors, where Professor Letitia was now standing, her supposed motor control issues completely absent as she moved with fluid precision around her locked room. "You profiled 7 people, but you made a critical error. You assumed they were all playing by your rules." "Impossible. I've controlled every variable, except one." Camilla's voice carried the satisfaction of a puzzle finally clicking into place. "Professor Leticia Montalvo isn't a victim of your experiments. She's been conducting her own." On the monitor, Leticia held up a small device toward the security camera, her lips moving in words they couldn't hear, but her message was clear. She was counting down from 10. "No," Emilio breathed, suddenly understanding. "She couldn't have what? Anticipated your plan? Prepared countermeasures?" Camilla kept her weapon trained on him while watching the screens. "You said, it yourself. She's a brilliant biochemist, one whose career you destroyed, whose life you ruined. Did you really think she'd just accept that?" Bruno moved to flank Emilio as the man's composure finally cracked. "She's been playing you, hasn't she? All those motor control issues, the apparent vulnerability. It was all an act." 3 years, Camilla continued, pieces falling into place. 3 years since her surgery. 3 years to plan, to study your routines, to understand your psychological experiments. She looked at the monitors again. 3 years to perfect her revenge. On screen 3, Letitia finished her countdown and pressed a button on her device. Throughout the mansion, the electronic locks disengaged with audible clicks. But more importantly, the gas vents that Emilio had intended to use sealed themselves shut. "How?" Emilio demanded, his scientific mind needing to understand even as his world collapsed. "Because she's been in your systems for months," Camilla replied. "Every profile you compiled, every psychological model you built, she's been watching you build them. She knew about tonight because she helped orchestrate it." The basement lights suddenly blazed to full intensity, revealing the extent of Emilio's hidden laboratory in stark detail. But they also revealed something else. Professor Leticia Montalvo, standing at the top of the stairs, no longer the frail woman who had needed help walking. "Hello, Emilio," she said, her voice carrying steel. "Surprised to see me mobile?" Emilio spun around, his face a mask of confusion and growing fear. "The surgery, the damage, was temporary." Leticia descended the stairs with perfect grace. "The motor control issues were real for about 6 months, but neuroplasticity is a wonderful thing. With proper therapy and motivation, the brain can rewire itself." She smiled coldly. "You taught me that, remember? Before you decided to use me as a test subject." "You've been faking disability for over 2 years, Bruno asked. "I've been preparing," Letitia corrected, "learning about Emilio's habits, his security systems, his psychological methods. Do you think it was coincidence that all his perfect test subjects were gathered here tonight during the perfect storm?" Camilla felt the last pieces clicking into place. "You arranged this entire weekend. The guest list, the timing, even the storm. Weather prediction is surprisingly accurate these days," Letitia said, "and Emilio was so predictable. Present him with an opportunity to observe all his subjects under controlled stress, and he couldn't resist." She looked at her former tormentor with disgust. "Your ego was always your weakness, Emilio. You never could resist showing off your brilliance." "But the murder," Bruno protested. "We saw the body." "You saw a performance," Letitia replied. "One that I orchestrated using Emilio's own methods against him. The paralytic compound, the staged death scene, even the psychological games, all designed to give him exactly what he thought he wanted while trapping him in his own web." Emilio backed against his laboratory equipment, reality finally crashing down on him. "You can't prove any of this. My documentation, my research, is all being transmitted to federal authorities as we speak," Letitia said, holding up a tablet. "Every file, every video, every detail of your illegal experiments. I've been copying everything for months. You're all criminals, Emilio shouted desperately. Everyone in this house has committed crimes. They deserve to face justice, Camilla interrupted. Legal justice, through proper channels, not your twisted version of science. But my work, my research into human behavior under stress, it's revolutionary. It's torture, Letitia said flatly, dressed up in academic language, but torture nonetheless. She turned to Camilla. Detective, you'll find extensive documentation of his crimes in the computer systems, more than enough to ensure he never hurts anyone again. Camilla looked around the basement laboratory, at the restraint tables, the monitoring equipment, the files documenting years of human experimentation. Dr. Torrealba, you're under arrest for multiple counts of aggravated assault, unlawful imprisonment, and human experimentation. As Bruno read him his rights, Emilio made one final attempt at intellectual superiority. You think you've won. This entire evening has provided invaluable data about human psychological responses. My legacy will... Your legacy, Letitia interrupted, will be as a cautionary tale about what happens when intelligence operates without empathy. She looked at Camilla. Sometimes the only way to catch a mastermind is to outthink them at their own game. Outside, the storm was finally breaking, the first hints of dawn creeping through the windows. In the library upstairs, 6 people waited to face the consequences of their actions, but through legal means, not torture. And in the basement of a mansion in the Hamptons, a would-be mastermind learned that the deadliest trap of all was the one set by his own arrogance.